you who are here right at 6 o'clock. We do have a few people from a curriculum committee that should be entering soon, a couple of our board members. But I'd like to really thank those of you who are here tonight. And I'm Mary Antonopoulos, those of you that may not know, and I'm the superintendent. And I'd like to first start off and ask our board president, Scott Taylor, to come up and address everyone.
Thanks, Marion. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of the school board, which most of them aren't in here right now. It's a very exciting evening for us. The administration and board have been discussing a bond for well over 3 years. Hundreds and hundreds of hours have been dedicated to a plan to set Lake Orion schools up for success in the near future, as well as protect and update the community's assets. Mrs. Giannopoulos will be presenting an in-depth history lesson to show the path we have followed and hope to follow in the future. The board has agreed to bring this plan to the voters in November because this plan offers long-term solutions to current and future physical issues throughout the district. This plan offers a clear and concise safety and technology plan. And lastly, this plan is a zero-mil increase for all taxpayers. Thank you for taking the time to be here this evening. It means a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Let me do a few more introductions now that a couple of our board members have entered. Dana Murnell, our board secretary, Bill Holt, trustee, and Birgit McQuiston, who is the board vice president, along with Scott, so we're pleased to have them here. If you are an administrator or a staff member in the district, would you stand? Thank you for being here. Appreciate that. Let me tell you a little bit about the purpose of tonight. Is really, I know there's a lot of information when we're presenting a bond. I've done this a number of different times in a number of different school districts. And I think it's really important, and I think it's incumbent on me and our administration and our board to make sure that information is accurate. And I know I'm privy to information that's out there. I know there's a lot of misinformation floating around already. And so I'm hoping that tonight is the beginning of our opportunity to share with you accurate information. I do want to say now, and I'll say a little later too, that my door is always open, as are the other administrators in the district and board members, to provide you with information. I'm not here to tell you how to vote. I'm here to tell you the accurate information that led us to tonight. So let me I want to do a history lesson first. My board. And I don't have a clicker because the technology in this room is lagging. But what I'd like to do is just kind of give you the rear view mirror approach. What led up to this? And we started this process, as Scott said, quite a number of years ago. This is not something that we just started or someone dreamed up. This really started in May of 2015. And we had something called a long-range planning committee that we convened at that time. And I'm going to ask Heidi, will you talk a little bit about what that long-range planning committee entailed?
The long-range planning committee was put together. There were many different members, and they were charged with looking throughout the district as to what was needed in the district to set up, generate ideas of things that needed to be done. Also taking into, knowing how our schools are funded, as well as, any of the deficits that we were going through at that point in time. So this committee really was charged at taking a look at what our current needs, where we stand currently, and what are some of the things that we wish for in the future. And that's where really the whole idea of the bond was born.
The important thing to keep in mind is this was done in phases, and this was part of phase one. What happened at that time in May of 2015, the district was faced with a financial deficit looming in front of us. And we felt that it was really important that before we did anything, that deficit had to be erased. So during phase one, which was from May 2015 through July of 2016, our goal was to erase that deficit. And thanks to John and all of our administrators for tightening up our belts, we were able to eliminate and reduce that projected deficit. For those of you who may be wanting to take notes, this PowerPoint and all of our materials will be available on our website, so you don't have to do that. Now, at the same time, we conducted what is known as an internal audit. We started looking at our facilities and all of the things that really, as Heidi said, were important in the school district. That long-range planning committee was comprised not only of administrators and staff members, but also it was comprised of community members, those who either have kids in their district or may not. It was comprised, again, of some staff members and quite a few of our parents. So it was really kind of a larger group of people who participated in that. So by fiscal 17, we were able to present a balanced budget to the board. Phase two was shortly after that. Phase two was a difficult time for the district, I will be very honest with you, because it was a time that we did some restructuring. It's not easy to close a school. At that time, based on our enrollment and based on a number of different things, we had an external analysis by a company called Lake Orion. They did an external analysis and they recommended that we close one elementary school, which we did. And at that time, the board was very kind of cautious in deciding what we were going to do with Pine Tree Elementary, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But in addition to identifying one less elementary school, we also did a complete redistricting of our population. Because if you think about it, when you take one school offline, then you really have to redistrict your student population, which is what we did during phase two. And that was in April of 16 through December of 16. And as I said, that's just not an easy thing to do, but we accomplished that. And I'll talk a little bit about Pine Tree as we go through the slides. But then the big thing is transitioning everyone. I have to be very candid with you that when you close a school and do restructuring and do redrawing of boundaries, you have a lot of very unhappy people. Children are fine, but the adults tend to be the ones who are worried that this may not go the way that they had hoped it would for their children. But as it turned out, during that transition phase, it was very, very successful. And we have created really a new landscape for our district. So simultaneously, the board started looking at our assets. We realized, again, we had to close a school, but the board did not want to sell that school. It was Pine Tree. And the reason they didn't want to sell it was there have been school districts who have sold schools and then realized later on that may have been a mistake. So our enrollment projections over the next few years have really remained very stable. So with the one school offline, we do not anticipate any additional school closures. Pine Tree, though, I'm going to ask Heidi again to talk a little bit about what we've done with Pine Tree. We're very excited about this new concept. So.
All right, Pine Tree is now Pine Tree Center. And this building will house essentially 3 different special education programs starting in a couple weeks after our open house on the 27th. First, on the whole upstairs of Pine Tree will be what is known as our phases program. That program is for students who are 18 to 26 years old that are special education students. So we have, almost up to now 50 students that program houses, and so that will be all of the top floor of Pine Tree at this point in time. So that program, I said, does educate adults that are of special education. They deal with life skills, employment opportunities, all of those things for those students. So that is a great opportunity for them. On the lower level, we will be offering 2 different programs. One will be for students who are emotionally impaired, and the other program will be for those students who are autistically impaired. These are students who cannot be mainstreamed as again into the general education classroom. So these are students who have severe needs and very unique needs. And so both of those programs will be housed in the lower level so that we can address all of the students' needs there. In addition, many of those students will be our own Lake Orion students, but we are calling it a center because we will also be offering this opportunity to students throughout the county. The county currently does offer one particular program. It's an emotionally impaired program down at the south end of the county, but these programs are full. In fact, we were having some problems getting some of our students that needed these services in these programs. So Oakland Schools, our intermediate school district, has also been working with us that we would be able to accept students from other districts as well, students who need these particular programs.
So rather than have an empty and vacant building in the middle of a neighborhood, it was definitely the board's decision to do something creative with Pine Tree, not only creative, but also provide a service for children who have special needs. And so we will be housing a number of children from around the county, as Heidi said, not only our own children there. So we're very excited about that. And Pine Tree has had quite a makeover. We had a ground planting last week, and so it's pretty neat, and we're excited about opening that up pretty soon. So, I don't want to take too much time, but I think it's important that you understand this last school year really has been our transition to the new landscape. And that was to ensure that all of our children and all of our staff members and all of our parents have the opportunity to transition to their new schools. A lot of the kids had new teachers, new staff members, and so forth. So I put this slide up because I think it's important. We always like to look back, kind of learn from what we have done, but I think it's really instructive. Whoops. There we go. I had a clicker, to focus on where we're going, to look at what the vision is for the district. And that's really what brings us here tonight. It is instructive to look back and learn from those kinds of things that we have done, but I think it's more important to look forward. So we are currently in what is known as Phase 5. Phase 5 is what brings us here tonight, which is to talk about the bond that the board has put on the ballot in November. Just want to take you through some of these slides. I want to apologize a minute. A lot of the slides have words, a lot of words, and I don't like to put a lot of text on slides. However, because these will go on the web at some point, I want to be able to have the information out there for others. If it were just pictures, I see some of you nodding, they would have a hard time reading that. We conducted a survey of our staff members and our community members. My voice is going out. Sorry. We interviewed staff members. John, have you come up? Help me out there. I feel like the allergies are getting me.
Yeah, we're coming in for Phase 5 in terms of meeting with staff, interviewing with staff. We've had surveys of the community. There were tours conducted and detailed review audit facilities, actually a couple sets of those in terms of all the facilities together. The most current grass bond condition of facilities, and out of all of that planning, we've kind of developed what we refer to as a 10-year capital improvement plan for the district, which gets us to this phase itself in terms of how to achieve that 10-year plan.
I think it's really important to realize that, a lot of time was spent in this. The staff and community surveys were really an important part of the development of what went into this bond. I'm not sure, but Brad, how many surveys did we do?
We had over 3,000 respondents.
Okay, overall, so that is really important. And our architect, Brad talked a little bit about that, conducted a full audit. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
We came with a team of licensed architects, engineers, electrical, mechanical, civil, structural, and went through your buildings and through your sites and did kind of a snapshot in time of what the needs were currently and what the needs would be long-term looking forward. To give the district an asset management plan for what are the needs that are going to come up on an annual basis, really looking very strategically at 10 years, but giving a range that goes out further than that. So did a very good assessment of all of the buildings and became a strong base for where we move things forward from there.
And that really formed this capital improvement plan. So the question has come up, how can you spend the money that you raise when you sell your bonds? And I think this is really important. First and foremost, and we are really pleased that the way this bond is structured, that there is no tax levy increase to our community. And so that is a key, because in previous bonds that was not the case. So we will be able to maintain the 7.49 mil levy to our community with this bond that's $160 million. And just up here, I think it's really important to note that we worked really hard to do that so that there was not an increase in the levy to the community. And this is the official language, I'll give you a minute to read that, that will be in the ballot. The other thing that's important to know is that the bond is in series. There are 3 series. And so, John, you're on. Tell a little bit about what a series bond is.
So in correlation to the 10-year capital spending plan, the funding of that would occur in 3 installments, so to speak. 2019 would be first series bond issuance, with roughly half of that amount, about $80 million or so in terms of projects going started at that point. 2022, we look to do a series of phase 2 of that program. Issue maybe roughly, I'm estimating $40 million. It's a little bit specifically a little less than that. And then come 2025, we issued the 3rd piece of the authorization, another roughly $40 million. And the planning there is, first of all, the environment we're in. If we issued $160 million, we wouldn't be able to get work done on the buildings and still actually hold schools. So there's a phasing capacity. There's a work switch and plan out phase that goes along with that. And it will carry us, once the actual physical work is done over the next 10 years, that'll position the district for another 20 years in total in terms of facility capacity, being brought up to date, being brought into a new and addressing all of the facility challenges in terms of getting into new instructional spaces and things along those lines.
So the key on this slide, and the key for our community, is number 1, that there is no tax rate increase, and number 2, that bonds will be sold in 3 series as the work is done. So I think that's, again, these are 2 different things from previous times that we have gone for bonds. So the question sometimes comes up, how can you spend that money? I've had people, I've got everything. I've had someone say to me, oh boy, salaries are going to increase. Bond money cannot be used for salaries or operational expenses. I have to tell you, it's a very, very, very strict auditing process when you go for a bond. We have to submit forms, information, a tremendous amount of information to the Michigan Department of Treasury. So it isn't just something that we decide we're going to do. This has to be approved by the Department of Treasury. So this is quite an extensive process, and they audit us throughout the use of our bonds. So again, this is not, here's your money and spend it any way you want. We're very carefully audited. I like to think of a bond like this. If you think about your home mortgage, that's kind of what a bond is. we've had some people say, well, what about a sinking fund? How is that different from a sinking fund? And a sinking fund is more like this. It's really a limited property tax. It's kind of a pay as you go along. It's levied every year. Remember, you see that in your summer tax bills that just came out. You access the money on hand as the projects are being done, which is very different than the lump sum with a bond. This is our district. It's pretty massive when you really think that we have 1.3 million square miles of space, or square feet of space on over 400 acres. And we have a number of facilities and sites. And one of the things I really want to stress with our community is that while we, meaning the administration and the board, we are the caretaker of our facilities and our sites, but we don't own them. The community owns them. And I think we've done a really good job over the past years of kind of masking our flaws, thanks to our operations staff and our buildings and grounds staff. But this bond is to fund your schools, not my schools, your schools that you own, they are your assets. And really our mantra throughout this is that what we want to create are safer, smarter, and stronger schools for our generation of students, not just right now, but to come. I'm going to be giving you a kind of a handout at the end of the meeting, but these are some of the key points, what we mean by safer schools. These are some of the things that will be included in all of our schools. We're looking at security entrances, enhanced lighting control systems, key card security. This is a time when security, unfortunately, is even more important than ever in our schools. I don't have to go into all that, but that's really one of the main focus pieces of this particular bond. Safety, smarter, renovated classrooms, STEM opportunities and STEM areas and STEM classes for our students, improved technology, multimedia. We are sorely lacking. When you look around our school districts in this county and you realize what some other school districts have for their students, it's really, we are sorely lacking because we have not had the opportunity or the finances to be able to support those efforts. There are two pieces in here I'm going to talk about in a minute. One is an early childhood center. The other one is Blank Sims. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Our operations, again, as I said, we are really good at masking our flaws. We have put together piecemeal, duct taped in some instances, some of our facility operations, and really, most of them are at the point of no longer having the useful life that they should, and we need to update all of those electrical, mechanical, and plumbing systems in our school district. These are things that every facility is going to see. And again, more detail will be on documents that we're going to post, but just to kind of give you a flavor of the kinds of things that will be covered in the bond if it's successful. Lighting, mechanical, roofing, these kinds of replacements of windows, doors, and hardwares. Really what we're looking at doing is extending the life of a number of our facilities. The STEM thing is big. Want to talk a little bit about it, Heidi? Putting you on the spot.
That's okay. STEM, as you can see, is the integration of science, technology, engineering, and math. probably heard a lot about this. In fact, last year the board did pass for us to add some STEM programming, some STEM coaches at our elementary level. This is an area where it's key right now, that students have these different kinds of opportunities to be able to compete in the real world. And these are things I think that will continue to evolve, and it's important that our classrooms are modernized and up to date so that our students are able to compete when they get out into the real world. And so hopefully these are some things that we would be looking at.
Instructional technology is a big thing. We're not just talking about devices, although that is a portion of the bond. What we're really talking about is much bigger. I know, Jeff, if you want to talk a little bit about that, I don't want to put you on the spot, but maybe I can.
Sure. So this will set our stage for technology for the next 10 years. What the bond issue would provide us with would be a continuous improvement plan and refresh cycle over 10 years, something we haven't been able to do. We have computers that are running 5 to 8 years old. Our wireless network's deeply in need of a refresh. If you ask any of your students, they complain usually at the high school here that they can't get on when they need to do their assignments. I hear it in my own household every day. So it's a great opportunity to set the stage for the next 10 years, bring us up to current standards, but also provide that refresh that's needed in the technology world. Much as you know at home, where you're constantly purchasing new iPhones or new routers, we have the same challenges, and we run an enterprise environment that supports 8,000 users. So we need to have the same structures in place that you are doing on a regular basis at home.
Thank you, Jeff. And this is a key, especially if our bond is successful, for operation of a number of the issues that our kids will be learning in the science, math, engineering, and technology areas. What I'd like to do now is just kind of switch from what's being done in all facilities, just kind of give you a brief overview of the specific things that will be done in each of the facilities, in addition to the things that I listed as all facilities. What you'll see there is Blaine Sims Elementary is 70 years old. I call your attention to the cost that's in parentheses, and those, I want to make it really clear, those are estimated costs, estimated project costs, pretty close to what it will be, but there's always fluctuating costs with any kind of construction. But I wanted to kind of give you a flavor of what's being spent in the bond at each one of our schools. The things that are listed underneath the individual schools are things that will be unique specifically to that school. So you'll see Sims is 70 years old, Carpenter is 61 years old. I have to read those to you. Orion Oaks is one of our newer ones. Paint Creek, Stadium Drive, and Weber, which is also 61 years old. So our schools definitely are aging. There's no question about it. Our 3 middle schools, Oakview Middle School, of course, is our newest school, 16. Scripps 53, Malden 45 years old. Those are the kinds of things that would be addressed in the bond. I always chuckle because everyone says, are you going to go to the new high school? Our high school is 22 years old. It has a lot of needs in this building as well. And again, I don't want to discredit the amount of work that our custodians and that our buildings and ground staff have done to maintain our facilities, because they've done a lot of work. But it's time for these kinds of things to be addressed. The administration building downtown, just some minor electrical upgrades, same thing with Moose Tree, Pine Tree Center. The county, because it is a center program building, has given us the costs. They're called startup costs for the building. There have been some things that were done through the sinking fund at Pine Tree, but the bond will not invest any sizable amount of money into Pine Tree. The transportation building, which is 18 years old, that's the one on Giddings Road, not the Noda building. And there'll be a lot of changes to the lighting, bus lifts, garage doors, those kinds of things. Are there any questions so far? I want to talk a little bit about the Scripps Road complex that we call. This includes the high school, Scripps Middle School, Stadium Drive Elementary, CERC, which is our Community Ed Resource Center, which at one time was a high school, a lot of athletic venues, practice fields, and so forth. How many of you had the opportunity to drive through there when school's in session? How many of you wish you didn't have to drive through there when school is in session? It's quite a complicated, complex, and congested area. So one of the things that this bond is posed to do is to look at that whole concept at the Scripps Road complex. What you know is there are only two ways in and out, Scripps Road and Stadium Drive. On any one day, this is the kind of traffic that you see. Buses, parents, kids, members of the public. These are the challenges with that whole Scripps Road complex, and it has gotten more and more difficult. First of all, the challenges are the conditions and the ages of the facilities in that area, the buses that go in and out, student drivers, parent drivers, and so forth. But what results, as I mentioned, is really a challenging area. The buildings are beyond their useful life. They are physically stressed. They're beyond capacity. It really is an issue that we wanted to address in this particular bond issue. CERC is 63 years old. How many of you have ever been in CERC? We're investing $7.6 million is what the bond is proposing for CERC. And what you see up here is to change the entire footprint of that facility. What's X'd out is proposed to be eliminated from CERC. What would retain at CERC is the area that we currently have for buildings and grounds, our technology, and our learning options program, which is our alternative education high school. That whole area was retrofitted a number of years ago. The buildings and grounds and technology is relatively in good shape. The rest of the building is not. So in addition to demolishing that portion of the school, which has a tremendous amount of advantages that I'll ask Brad to talk about in a minute, it also improves the whole student parking, yes.
What's the timetable for eliminating the piece you want to eliminate?
Can you hold that question 1 second? I'll let Brad, which series that's in, okay? Well, okay, let me just finish this up and then we will. When you eliminate a portion of a building, right now the way CERC has been used, it's really been, I don't want to call it a catch-all, but it really has been where we've had a number of administrative functions that operate out of it. For instance, food services operates out of there. It's our central enrollment area, our community education office, and so forth. So in addition to the options, buildings and grounds, and technology, it has served a function for other operations throughout the district. It also, a major portion of it in the back, houses our early childhood programs. And so those programs right now are in classrooms that really were built in 1957 as high school classrooms. So when we demolish that portion of the building, then we have to find spaces for those other functions.
Is that something we've solved? The other spaces, what we know.
yes, with the bond, the proposed bond will resolve that issue. Yes, we will be moving, okay, the relocation of food services, central enrollment, and community ed offices will move to the lower level of the Scripps Middle School. Right now, at the lower level is where the administrative offices are at Scripps. Those offices are to be moved upstairs with the counseling and the education committee in Scripps. Ross, probably not a number of years. But there's a whole office area down there, so all of those functions will be moved there. The early child, we've already moved some of the programs out of there. The special education, special education offices and programs that were housed at that building have already moved to the Pine Tree Center. So the big piece is the early childhood programs. And so our plan for that is to relocate those into a new facility on property that we own near Orion Oaks Elementary, right on the corner of Clarkston and Joslyn, and to build a new center there at that corner. All of you know where that is? Let me talk a little bit about that. Right now, we have 16 classrooms in CIRC for early childhood. Early childhood programs, I want to talk a little bit about that. These are not daycare programs necessarily. These are programs that we consider to be our pre-kindergarten programs that feed into our regular general population in kindergarten. These are like preschool programs for our children. They are very well attended. That sometimes we even have a waiting list for each of these programs. We have 16 rooms of preschool children at the CIRC building right now. We also have 3 classrooms of early childhood programs that are housed in 3 different elementary schools. The CIRC facility, as I said, is 63 years old. It was built in '57, and it was built as a high school.
Mary,
Yes.
I think we should also mention that many of those early childhood programs are mandated by the federal and state
Thank you.
government. They're not just an option of yes or no, but we are required to offer certain programs in the early childhood program.
For instance, we have Head Start programs, which are federally funded programs. We have
Special ed.
the special education program. So we have, I think it's about almost 200 students in these programs who are, we are required to educate. The law in Michigan is different than in some other states. In Michigan, we are required to educate children with special needs from birth through 26. A number of other school districts have a shortened time period. So we are required, if a child is identified with special needs, to provide them with education. So this new early childhood center that we are proposing has a capacity for 21 classrooms. And what that would do, it would allow us to bring the 3 classrooms that are currently in other, because we didn't have enough room at CIRC, that are currently in the other schools to this center. So we would have all of our early childhood programs together in one facility. It also, one of the things that the board would like to do is to continue to promote those programs as well as enhance our revenue. So this would allow us 2 additional rooms in this facility to have for program revenue. And the nice thing about the location is that it is on the west side of 24, closer over towards Clarkston, where they're right now on 24, which is so congested. I think there are 3 or 4 preschools right along 24, up and down that corridor. So this sets it a little further aside so that it has great potential for program growth as well as revenue enhancement, because this program is self-funded. In other words, we do not, John, you know a little bit about that, but we do not, this does not come from our operational budget. In fact, the early childhood programs do bring money into the district, to the general fund. John?
Yeah, operationally speaking, all their programs are, from a cost profitability point of view, They are either breaking even or making money depending upon the program. Some of the smaller programs are a little harder with smaller numbers. But they're making money into the sense that they're contributing back, and we refer to it as an indirect revenue transfer back to the general fund that generates roughly 200,000, I believe we're at, a little over that at this point in terms of feeding back to the general fund from an operational support point of view district-wide. It's a very healthy program, and it is very much in regards to feeding to the district, and financially it's on great footing. We do have a very good director.
Right.
2 questions. You say you have 200 mandated students in the program right now, but how many, what's the total enrollment that we have right now?
I don't, what, do we have that? I can pull it up.
How much?
We don't have with the number specifically with us, but we'll post that out. It's over 200.
But if I'm hearing you correctly, the parents are going to be paying
Yes.
for this?
Yes.
And so what you're actually telling me, they're in direct, this would be a taxpayer funded operations
Yes.
in direct competition with entrepreneurs in our area?
In the context of the early childhood world, that's been the situation forever. It's not any different, frankly, than we have sports programming at the schools, and there's club sports and travel sports and any other operations that really goes on in the school. And you can get a tutor that's a similar kind of argument. But in terms of the history of early childhood, it's been supported in schools, public schools for, I would fair to say, decades and decades in terms of that piece.
Oh, I understand the mandate.
Some of our group is mandated and some of it's not for profit.
But I think there's something even more important. First of all, we are in a school district that people tend to want to come to and be sought after, not only as parents who move in, but also staff members. And if you really look at our surrounding districts with whom we do compete, like Rochester, like Troy, those, right now, I think Rochester just purchased a church where they're building for their early childhood programs. So is Troy. Troy has a huge enterprise. Clarkston has a separate early childhood center that they built. So it is not like we are groundbreaking or doing something that nobody else has done. The key to an early childhood program, first of all, if you look at what the federal government has been doing over the years, early childhood is a must for our young students as they come into our schools. And there's a tremendous amount of money for early childhood programs for getting kids ready for school when they come in. But what we have found by having our own early childhood program, the probability of our children staying within our school district and becoming a student in our district where we do collect a foundation grant for them at some point is far more likely than if they go to a different one. So I have no intent, honestly, Ross, to argue the importance, the critical importance of early child education. Can you hold your question so I can just finish this piece up and then?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. Let me just, the other piece that is important to know about the Early Childhood Center is that it tends to have, right now at CERC, because of the age of the building and the condition of the building, there are compliance issues that we have to deal with on a regular basis. A new Early Childhood Center would not have that. There are strict regulations. Again, federal law requires certain things, size of the room, number of staff members, and so forth. So early childhood education is a number of very strict compliance issues. So let me just finish this piece up. I just want to give you the kind of the cost analysis that we looked at. To renovate CERC for the early childhood program, to make it in compliance and keep it as a 16-room capacity in that building would cost about $11.6 million. The cost to build a new center on the Joslyn Road property, which we own, is about $17.9 million. But keep in mind that's how many more rooms, 5 more classrooms. So I'll let you do the math if you want to go to 16 rooms. But we see it also as a revenue. The other advantage is that we will have something that's well needed. Ken, you can tell me, and Ken is the principal, was at Orion Oaks, now at Sims. And Drew, this bond will allow us to have an ingress and an egress from that location right onto Clarkston Road. How many of you ever tried to get out of Orion Oaks right onto Joslyn Road or drive down Joslyn Road? It's really a nightmare. So this proposal, especially with the Early Childhood Center, will allow us to build a road out from both Orion Oaks and Pine Tree Center, or the Early Childhood Center onto Clarkston Road. So that's what the cost differential is. So Josh?
So, Dan, I believe you get my daughter would get the same, so I couldn't ask you a question. But the early childhood, I think we tried to enroll our kids when we did it. And there was I just want to make sure it's the same program. There was a waiting list. We actually were not able to get them into the program. Is this the same program that we're talking about?
It is.
So, while I know there's a comment about other entrepreneurial, businesses and so forth, I remember a few years back waiting in line at 6 in the morning with a bunch of other people trying to get there as early as possible. We were denied the ability to get our kids into the program because of the demand. So I don't know if that still is in fact there today, and if it is, I think it would be helpful for some of the folks asking good questions, quite frankly, but the enrollment question and the demand, I think it would be good to know that, because I don't know if it's still that way, but it was pretty disappointing because we would rather be in the Lake Orion School District, getting them started on the training, getting prepared for kindergarten, than necessarily where we ended up sending them to the community.
And that's one of the reasons we're kind of looking at this being able to be expanded so that we do have growth, because like Josh is saying, that what will happen is, because other school districts do have schools of choice, that students, if they start early childhood or pre-K in another school district, may very well stay in that school district as a schools of choice student to further their education.
Actually, to that point, I remember having to call you when we got into Clarkston, and I had to get a voucher to do that. I knew that was exactly what we did, right? We ended up going to Clarkston schools in order to stop the board.
One of the reasons I asked the question, Mary, right across the Clarkston Road is a daycare center operation. George said it's my next door neighbor, and I know they're all of the churches are involved with it and so forth. The need exceeds that I can understand. It's just a question of
It's a different curriculum, though.
yeah,
It's completely.
it is.
Yeah.
No, but I
piece of
agree.
property makes sense.
To build a building, if there isn't a need, I can tell you that we have a tremendous need, and you've just validated that. We always have a waiting list. All you have to do is go on Facebook, if you have the nerve to do that, and see people are always looking for early childhood programs when one is full. So,
Very good program too. My daughter was in it. Very good program.
I have three grandsons in programs like that right now, so I'm very
yeah. Okay. And then, this is kind of our conclusion. What brings us to putting this in the bond? Making that kind of a financial commitment to a 63-year-old building for another 30-some years, when it's already as old as it is. Really, we believe it's not fiscally responsible as administrators or a school board, nor is it a sound investment of our taxpayers' money. And that's in relationship to CERC. So that's what the decision is. Do you put money into it? Or do you do this master plan?
So when you tear down that other part of the CERT building, your plans did you say a parking lot you were going to put in? Is that what you were?
There'll be a lot of different things. Brad, do you want to talk about that? I'm sorry, I should have brought that up, Paul.
A big part of replacing a portion of CERC is to make that whole site work better. With the high school, with Scripps Middle School, with Stadium Drive Elementary, and the functions that are left at the CERC building with the learning options program and the support programs that are there. It's making the traffic flow work, it's making the parking work, and it's really coming closer to right-sizing that site. And anytime you replace a function in a building like that, obviously the new building has to be built first before you can go back and then address the site. And so the way that circuit, or the way that Scripps is going to be redesigned and the office moved to the east side of the building, you really need more of that space up there to make that drive and that office area work for Scripps Middle School, but also to support the Learning Options program in the high school as well. And Stadium Drive Elementary will benefit from that too, with more room and more parking and the ability to redesign what's happening. So everything on the campus benefits with a portion of CERC being replaced on other sites.
I'm in the industry, especially parking lots and stuff like that, and I don't see any adjustment that can be done to anything to help the traffic flow on Stadium or Scripps. I mean, the problem is 24.
The problem is 24, right?
So there's no way to fix that, even if you do all, you're saying, you might help stuff inside the building flow inside maybe the campus a little bit, but you're not gonna adjust the traffic issues by doing any of that kind of stuff.
We're addressing what we have the ability to address, and we're taking a portion of the load off from the campus, which is going to help us, because all the preschool students are driven there by their parents. Very minimal bus transportation, so there's a certain amount of vehicles that are taken off from that site immediately, and within the context of the site that we can adjust, we are making an impact on that. Now, 24 we can't impact.
It all comes down to the cost benefit. I mean, how much you're going to spend to adjust the traffic issues, very minor. I mean, very minor. So I deal with this all the time. I'm up here every day of the week with my kids in swimming. I'm very aware. My daughters went to Stadium. I mean, I've lived here for 30 plus years. I said, how much you're going to spend to fix something like that in the benefit? I just don't, that's my concern.
Well, but that's not the only reason why these programs are being replaced from the CERC building. The 50s buildings in this state, when they were built, were traditionally some of the least expensive, quickest, cheapest buildings that were built. They were built for a short term. You've really gotten your money's worth out of that CERC building. And you just adapted, you moved into that building with some of the programs that are there. They were not designed for early childhood. We're not designed for a lot of the programs that are in there. So we're making this a long-term solution. Instead of putting a lot of money into that building and still having an old shell that's really still a pretty cheap shell and just fixing some of the insides of it, it's fixing the problem for the long term.
Well, I get how CERC's outdated. I went to high school there. It was bad when I graduated in '93. I don't doubt that. Mike said how much money you're going to put in to try to make the traffic flow better. I'm just talking about stuff that I know.
Yep.
And I've seen, I'm at 14 or 15 different schools right now, our company is. I'm in several different districts.
Yep.
And I see them doing things that make zero sense. Even the engineers we talk to, like, we don't know why they're doing that. I mean, I understand getting rid of CERC and wanting to tear part of it down. It's just like, how much money are you going to put in to make traffic flow different? That would be my concern.
And I think that's a really good question, because there's not, I mean, the major investment really is into the relocation of the functions that are currently there. We'll be putting up all those costs, so Paul, because I think those are really good questions, specifically what is being done for site work and so forth. So we'll make sure that everybody has access to those as well. Okay.
Joanne has a question.
You asked me to hold my question. Is now the time for my question? When are you gonna tear down the CERC building?
Joanne, I really want to put you off. Hold on. What series is the CERC building scheduled to be right now?
Late in Series 2.
Which would be when? 2 years.
Construction timeframe, 22 to 25-ish.
What'd you say?
22 to 25.
Second phase.
Second
So you
phase.
gotta build, for instance,
Okay.
you gotta build to where they're going first, and then
Okay, 'cause I have my Lake Orion Lions Club hat on. And people are very nice and allow us to use it for our food basket program.
Ah, we're taking care of that.
So I need to know how much time we got to find another location so we can take care of families in need at Christmas time.
I knew there was a method to your madness with that question. I'll tell you what. There's a couple of programs that use that facility. One is certainly the Lions Christmas Basket, but the other one is a Blessings in a Backpack program, which we have all of the food that comes out of there. So we've already considered that, and we have locations scheduled for all of that, so we will not forget you for sure. You can tell the Lions, I have my word on
As long as I got my Lions hat
that.
on. You talk about moving the special needs kids. Are all of them, the ones that are currently at the CERT building, moving over to Pine Tree?
Just
I'm
the
talking
phases.
about looking for our Christmas program we
Yes.
put on.
Yes, that program that you put your program on for, the phases program, which is the 18 to 26-year-old students, will be housed at the Pine Tree Center. And so they have a wonderful gym there, the Alameda Center. So we'll make sure that you can have your,
And will they be moved this December?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
September.
Now I can take back word to the kids and, I mean, in the Lions Club, and so they're not making arrangements to be over there at your old media room and, well, where are all the kids? Where'd they go? Thank you.
Yes, and we are most appreciative of the Lions for doing that too. Yes, sir.
Is there a reason why this service we want to make as like a centrally localized service versus spread out through all of like the elementary schools and things like that that are
The early childhood programs. For programming, number one, it makes more sense to have all of the programs in one building, kind of like having all of your K-5 programs in one building for your educational purposes, as opposed to just being a daycare, one classroom here, one classroom there. Heidi, I don't know if you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, not only with the, curriculum, but also with the staffing efficiencies as well.
Okay.
And typically, you will see that in communities, they generally are under one roof.
And just age-appropriate activities can be conducted when they're all in one location. That would be for, 3, 4-year-old students as opposed to one group of 3, 4-year-olds in a building where they have 5th graders. So that's really one of the main reasons.
Although one of the things that I want to make sure people aren't confused, we do have before school care and after school care. That's separate. Those will still be in each of the buildings.
That's like latchkey.
Yeah.
Is
Or
there any
SAP.
capacity? There's not
No.
capacity.
No, in fact, that's one of the reasons this building will be 21 rooms, so that we can move. There are 3 early childhood programs that are currently in, because we don't have room at CERC for those programs, and we have of the demand. So we have 3 classrooms that we have Paint Creek,
Weber, and Oriental.
Orientals, each have an early childhood classroom, and so we'll be pleased to be able, if the bond is successful, to be able to move them over to this particular center. Let me address.
Video.
Bring your
ride.
Sorry.
Okay,
We have a video to show, so we're going to try to get that ready.
okay, but I want to.
Oh, you want to get some, yeah, get something.
I'm not
Sorry.
done.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I want to talk for a minute about blank sims, because I know there were some questions about that. I'm trying to address questions that I heard people asking, and more importantly, what I'm hearing misinformation about. For instance, the Early Childhood Center. I hope that some of those questions have been addressed, but also about blank sims. Blank Sims Elementary School, the core of that building is 70 years old. It is the oldest building. It is the only Lake Orion school that is in the village of Lake Orion and services our resident population of the village. It's an outdated, I'm sorry, Ken, I know you love your school, but it's outdated. The system's on replacement. It would cost us about $9.5 million in new construction. This is strictly about construction, to renovate Blank Sims Elementary School. To build a new school, it would be about 15.8. This is strictly new construction. And you'll see what that is. To build 72,000 square foot facility, which expands the use of Blank Sims. Whoop. What happened to my slide is missing? That's all right. It does not make sense to invest in fixing up a school that is that old when in fact a new construction would make more sense. Similar to the CERT building, Blanche Sims, it's the same concept that drove us to recommending a building of a new school, a new facility.
Two questions. One, what would be the useful life of a new school versus renovating Blanche Sims? What would be the difference of that useful life?
Useful life on the remodeling is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 years. A new facility is 40 plus.
And then the second question I have is, and this comes from just hearing, again, I wish I had somebody here right now, but there was talk about potentially shutting down 2 schools at one point. Now that everything is being redistricted and you have your population in each of the schools, what I think in the community I've heard, why, build a new school when there may be another school closing, or maybe there isn't another school closing, so maybe, at this point.
When we did the original audit way back in 15, when Plant Moran Cressel looked at the district, they gave us the tightest possible configuration of the schools. And we looked at that, and we looked at our enrollment projections. We have those done every year by a company called Stanford, and they give us enrollment projections. In our case, we did 2 different enrollment projections. We did Stanford, and we also did Clinton and Cressa enrollment projections to see what the forecast was. We have no indication of an enrollment decline. We believe our enrollment is tapered off. The problem in our district is not that we are losing students. It is that we are aging our population. In other words, we have more kids who are graduating than we are bringing in as kindergartners. That is starting to taper off. And Rick, I'm going to ask you to address that whole enrollment thing. We have had no discussions about additional closures with the board, nor is that a recommendation from the administration.
Yeah, and we began that, we've been doing enrollment studies as a district for years, but 3 years ago, we really did a deep dive, and actually, I think our internal projections are more accurate than those that we actually get from 2 of the other companies. And all indications are that we have plateaued with our enrollment, and for the next 7 to 10 years, our anticipated enrollment will be about where we're at now. We don't see a spike unless something drastic happens in the area. And the amount of industry that we rely on now, with any single one industry having a significant impact on us as a community, if it were to dry up and go away, really doesn't exist. So as Marion said, the issue is we're not losing students, we're just aging out because people are not having children as often as they did. And you have to go back and think about the age of the children that are coming in now. What took place 5, 6, 7 years ago when those children were being conceived? Where were we then with the economy? And you have to plan out 5, 6, 7 years. So we're seeing a recovery now. We're seeing real estate recover a little bit. We're seeing people that traditionally would have sold homes earlier and in retirement and opened up those homes for younger families to come in. That was on pause for a while, and we're starting to see a resurgence of that. So we're very confident that we have stabilized enrollment for a good 7 to 10 years down the road. We don't anticipate the need for any reductions in facilities at this point.
I will say too that study did look at, sorry John, crunching the numbers, not necessarily from not necessarily from a program aspect. So for instance, could we take the 3 middle schools and condense them down to 2 per se, numbers-wise? Yes, but that would, going from 3 to 2, but that would result in approximately 1,000 students in those 2 middle schools, with the whole program being changed, no team concept, electives on carts. So that recommendation, I just want to make sure that it is clear that truly that looked at the numbers, not at the programs that we are running in our buildings. And if any of you have been in a middle school or have middle school children, you know that 1,000 of them under one roof would probably not be a good idea.
I think our middle school principals who are here might be principals of those. Yes, sir.
I'm just trying to reconcile something you just said. I think you just said that enrollment from the, at the beginning is down, it's going down. So how are we going to be leveling off if we have the enrollment that is down at the front end of the process?
Where we're at, those larger classes that are now in the high school, in the next 2 to 3 years will be gone. And the number that we anticipate based on county birth rates and so forth over the last 5 years, the number of children that, and we have the calculations, the percentages that we normally recoup of the total county birth rates. It's a very complicated formula, but anyway, the number of kids we anticipate coming in as kindergartners will more align with the kids that are graduating after about 3 years from now. So then we'll start to see that evening out.
So for instance, we graduated, Steve, how many kids graduated last year? 500?
Yep. High
500? And I think our enrollment for kindergarten was a little over 400 and something.
This year, we anticipate our projection is 483 resident
So
kindergartners,
it's about 100 down.
and those numbers are slowly starting to just in line. We had heydays here with class sizes that were graduating in excess of 600, 650 at one point.
But our, like for instance, our 10th, 11th, 9th, 10th, and 11th grade classes are not that large, they're starting to diminish as well.
So I'd heard the estimates of it, we were losing about 100 students per year. That's not the case?
Entering kindergarten is 100 students every year, yes. But that has not created
That's
the
been
need to
historical.
close a school. That's
Right,
historic.
that's the history on it. That number is becoming what we're saying in terms of the incoming kindergartners relative to the outgoing seniors. They're getting the balance now. In the next few years, they will be roughly in balance. So that will get us as a school district population enrollment stabilized. So that's what we're speaking to, the stability of enrollment.
So is it fair to say that, I think you said this, that a second elementary school is not on the horizon?
Right.
Closed, it was considered because of some of the reports, but now that you guys have redistricted, you know where your enrollment is.
So we
So-
had no discussions about closing.
I mean,
We closed the one elementary school and consolidated. That was the Pine Tree Elementary School that we did close and did the redistricting at that time. We do not see a need for any closing. If
Oh.
anything, if population starts to increase, that's something that we would look at. And our middle schools are large enough to accommodate an increase in population. Yes, sir.
And the elementary schools are packed. I mean, they're at pretty much capacity right now, so there's no way that you would be able to close the school down and still house all of the students. I mean, most classes are at the state mandated limits or above them from what I've seen.
And we will be freeing up, if the bond is successful, 3 classrooms in 3 of the schools. If the bond is successful, we're able to move a couple of those programs. And the advantage that we have in our district is that we have separate classrooms for our specials. I know that there are some districts that have art on a cart or music in the cafeteria, or their programs for special needs children, in the hallways. So we have been very fortunate not to have to do that. We have separate classrooms for art, music, phys ed, of course, and computers and so forth. So there are always those spaces if we ever came to that point. But no, I don't see us closing the school church. That's never even been discussed, other than way back when Point Cressa brought that up. We do have a video that we'd like to, Ross, do you have another
Yeah, one final question.
Sure. Doesn't have to be.
If this
final.
gets funded for the community, when would the dust settle on all the construction? When would it be done? How many years out are we talking about?
Phase 3 would be scheduled to complete in 28? I'm pretty sure it's good, yeah. Roughly 10 years out.
10 years down the road. Now, the cost figures that you are running past us at this point, because construction and the cost of dollar value and so forth keeps going up, is that factored into these cost figures that you're putting in front of us at this point in time?
Yes.
You got 10-year increases in those
Yes.
figures?
Yes, escalation was figured in over the duration of the series. Series 1, not as much. Series 2 and 3, there's more escalation figured in. Yes.
Yeah, know those figures, those
I
percent.
don't off the top of my head. It was part of a computer program as part of the funding, the budgeting process.
Like typical inflation type of?
Yeah, the typical CPI that was used to factor that.
What this slide shows is our competing districts. This is all the Oakland County school districts, not just around us, but throughout Oakland County, that have had successful bond elections in red. Our neighbor that we do compete with, Oxford, not only passed the bond issue, but also passed the sinking fund at the same time last year. Rochester schools, what was theirs? Do you remember 200 and some million? Yeah. What was it, 185? Bluefield Hills. Clarkston just recently passed one a year and a half ago. But I want you to see that even some of our smaller districts in the southern part of the county, like Ferndale, Hazel Park, and most school districts have all had successful bond issues. In the election that just happened in last month, I believe that every single school-related election was successful, whether it was a sinking fund or a bond. So I just wanted you to see that these are districts with whom we compete in a number of different ways. So we have loaded on our website all kinds of materials, and that will continue. We just really kind of started to load them. We wanted to make sure that we had this meeting tonight so we could at least get some information out to you and answer any of your questions. I do, is that video ready, Mark?
We'll have to come around and take it.
Okay. If you want, yeah.
We have one question about Brian said. When the discussion on the sinking fund was going through, I seen a number for Blanche Jen's money that it needed. It was nowhere near brought up that it needed that much, or a new building was going to be needed. Why was that left out, or weren't you guys aware of that situation?
We didn't have that kind of money for sinking.
Well,
The sinking fund was really.
Well, I know, but it wasn't discussed about how bad, it wasn't brought to, I was shocked when I heard that, because I followed sinking fund very closely, and it said it needed, several $1 million, and now it's a whole new building.
Yeah, the perspective of the sinking fund, when we're working with Chris on that, the perspective on all the pricing for costs related to any of the forecasts and the plans for the sinking fund were based upon the premise of immediate need, high priority, keep the building going funding. So under the 10-year plan, if nothing's done, the we're going to spend $3 million just to keep the lights on. While everything else continues to degrade, if you will. Or the bond piece, and getting back to the difference between the two, the bond piece is really going to go in and handle the heavy lifting of the major renovation of the facility. It's 7 years old. The sinking fund number that was specific to the maintenance approach. And then all those numbers in there relative to all the buildings. As opposed to replacing a roof when it should be replaced, it deals with the weakest section that has to be done, so to speak.
You guys-
Does that make sense?
So, yeah, I just wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
That's what I was specifically looking at.
Because there wasn't enough revenue generated from the sinking fund to replace anything as a building.
I knew it was an old building, I knew it was the oldest one in the district for sure. So if it does go through, and you want to replace the building itself, would you build on the same site, or
Yes.
what would happen with the building?
On
Is it
the
in the back
same
where
site.
the bus garage used to be?
Yeah. Which, that's right now another building. So it would be on the same site? Well, absolutely, because again, that's the only school that is on, for a village, you know?
It's the student capacity in the northeast section of the district.
Right.
It also looks like you're increasing the square footage of the building.
We are. Because we're redistricting too, the population is growing there.
Hey Brad, can you talk about the process? Like, Paul's got a good question as far as the actual process of building a new building, like the 3-minute snippet that you gave us as far as how it would be, the site would be done, the building would be built, the kids could still stay in the old school type thing.
Yeah, it's a similar kind of concept to what we talked about with replacing the early childhood center. Here, it's a little bit more volatile because you're doing it on a site that's currently an active site. And so the first thing you do is set up safety partitions to separate the construction site from where the kids are going to school. So the school would maintain operations while the construction is going on. The whole new building would be built, and then in the last summer, that demo would happen. The building would be completed, the demo would happen over the summer. So in the fall, when the kids came back, they would come back to a brand new school with the old building being gone. So the transition happens over time. It's probably about a 3-year process. It's about a year for design, about 2 years for construction for the whole thing. So, you know, if the bond issue were to pass in November, it doesn't happen immediately. It takes time to make that happen. But it's all done with the safety of the students in mind and keeping that separation from the construction and the education that's happening on that site.
So that'd be like, that'd be phase 1,
That would.
section 1, that'd be first.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a high-level question. What happens if voters do not approve this in November?
Well, I'm gonna be really candid and frank,
Yeah,
okay? There's no way we can continue to maintain and keep up our facilities and our sites with the budget that we have without cutting programs. So the truth of the matter is, and I really hate to say it, because we have done everything to this point to be able to maintain programs in this school district. We have cut everything that we possibly can. In fact, the year that we went into a little bit of a deficit was because we wanted to maintain teaming at the middle school, art and music separate, those kinds of things. And I have to be very honest with you, because of the condition of our buildings, and if the bond is not successful, operational money is going to have to be used to take care of our facilities. And that means we would be cutting program. Okay?
I got a silly question. Why is the picture on that screen larger than the picture on this screen?
It's the angle that you're looking at.
Because the technology needs to be replaced.
Listen, I know I've been looking for a clicker, I still can't find a clicker. You ready? We have a really nice video, oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
Real
sir.
quick, I think one thing that would be important going forward is to address things that are funded under the sinking fund, and you did some of it, versus things that are going to be funded under this bond, because the lines get blurred pretty easily with just bullet points.
I know,
And-
I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
You just ask the city, but why do you need a bond? And they're really very different pots of money. But our website that I look at posting up here, there's a whole section on the sinking fund, and our construction companies do reports. So everything that, every penny that's being spent on the sinking fund is listed there, so people will have an opportunity. Problem is, people don't want to go and look at those.
Right, but-
You know,
But I think one point that would be well served is the funding that was going to go to Blanche Sims, if this passes, where that funding would
That's a
go.
good question.
So I think that would be, a very key point. And then some of the other, if there's other changes that cascade down from
I
that.
think one other piece we didn't hit is when we did a facility needs analysis, what was the number? So the pie in the sky, fix everything, replace things that need to be replaced. If we made this the top notch, what was it? It was $300 million.
Over 300.
So that has been cut back to the 160. But then also, like you said, the sinking fund's $3 million a year. So when you look at the perspective of the amounts of money, the $3 million
I
is.
agree, and I think we can't, I'm getting, I live with a school board member, so I get peppered with questions, and I just say, call you guys. But the question back there is very important. We can't, while it's great that it's out there and it's on the website, people just
No, I
are not going
understand.
there. So I think the number one question that always comes up is, you pass the sinking fund, you're doing a bond, what's the difference? People are confused, and I think it just needs to be communicated all the time in some way, spoon feeding it instead of having people.
That's been the hardest thing to address as we've gone through this, is to have a clear explanation, because it's fuzzy, it's real fuzzy. Someone said you did a roof. Well, I thought that bond money should be sinking fund. But it's like what John said, when we fixed the roof, it was roof, whatever you want to call it. It's patch, you're patching it. It's not a complete replacement, which is really what it's needed.
But I think if people can
But I
understand
agree,
the plan.
I think it's a great
and
question.
Yeah, we
Yep.
can bridge that gap a little bit and say, hey,
We've
in
Yep.
8 years,
This is
instead of the
what we've
sinking
done.
fund around 10 years, we will modify this, because we'll have a new building.
We've actually been in terms of preliminarily looking at, making assumptions about the before it's passed, making some decisions as to what ends up in the 160 million. There's some crosswalking that went on, so we're already looking down the road, and understanding what this gentleman was pointing out. So there's gonna be some realignment, for lack of a better word, and then we communicate a lot too in terms of.
The guiding principle in this bond was not to increase the tax rate. So,
At the time, you're taking the time off, right?
I'm sorry?
You're taking the length of time off.
Oh, of course you are.
But the point
Sure, but
being,
you're always going to have a millage.
a sales point that I think I hear you being asked here, is you're gonna save some money on the 10-year sinking fund that we talked about when the dust settles, is that correct? What's the total going to be if this gets approved? Because you're rolling everything into one set of bonds going forward, correct?
No, you'll still have a sinking fund, and you'll still have,
No, but you're talking about the taxpayer and what we all have to pay taxes for. So what is the bottom line? You have savings that you're gonna make on this, from what you did last fall, correct?
So I'm not sure I'm following, so let me reiterate.
We just passed the sinking fund last
Right.
fall.
So
So that was the 10-year projection you were.
Right, so it's.
Now you're presenting 20 years, and you're starting out, it's all being rolled in to the one set of bonds going forward, so.
Wait,
No, I never said that.
No, no.
Two different things.
Yeah,
One's a
So are we
tax.
saving money, and number two, what's the total cost?
Okay, but I want to make that really clear, that's not accurate. They're not being rolled in together at all. The sinking fund money is a tax. You get taxed. Bonds are through the sale of bonds. So they're two different pots. Most districts have a bond program as well as a sinking fund for the ongoing maintenance of the projects that were completed in a bond.
And to your point, the big shift that we will make, assuming the bond proposals go forward, we'll shift from the current focus of the project of the sinking fund now are highest priority emergency. For instance, 2 weeks ago, we just replaced the chiller at Pain Creek. So that's $250,000 project right there that wasn't in the original scheduling of the sinking fund. For this time frame, it was scheduled further out, but you gotta do what you gotta do it. So in the end, when we realign, the focus of the sinking fund will go back on the traditional maintenance and repair activity of a district. And the bond will get everything else up to speed and then move forward for capacity for the next 10 to 15 years. And then the sinking fund will operate for the rest of its life to the perspective of traditional maintenance work. If a motor in the pool goes out, it would take care of that kind of stuff.
But
So
basically,
it'll be a
I'm looking
realignment.
for savings, and I think you're confirming that there is in the long scope of things.
There'll be savings from you don't have to spend the same dollar twice, like if we use sinking fund money to fix up all the Plain Sims, and 4 years later, we're gonna do it all over again, because the roof itself is still in general failure, so to speak. With the bond, we're gonna tear the whole thing off next year, and it'll be good for 20 years. So that's where the conceptual.
That's where it's going.
Okay. So you said the sinking fund is for emergency purposes, stuff that's dire need, right? It has to be
Ours
done.
is, planning behind ours is.
My question is,
Short.
why did you guys spend $300,000 to $500,000 on the entranceway to the stadium? I mean, that wasn't necessary to spend that amount of money on the entranceway to that place. If the needs are so dire, why spend that type of money to do that?
That project was included on the sinking fund, and originally was, when we issued those reports saying, this is what we're looking at doing.
I don't remember reading anything about spending $300,000 to $500,000 on an entranceway to the stadium. I know the field had to get redone,
Right,
and
the
the
field
track.
work, the track work, the flying piece had a bunch of, to meet requirements for compliance for ADA as well as handicap parking and some safety pieces in terms of.
But the stamped concrete, your wrought iron fencing, all that was above and beyond what should have been done. What, I guess they should have, that could have been done more cost effectively. And a lot of people see that and are upset about that in the community. well, I thought this was to fix that. And that could be a hindrance to the bond. Because you guys went all the way up top. You guys did a great job, it's beautiful, but a lot of money was spent on that entranceway, a lot.
It feeds into the master plan for that area over there, so ideally, had we had a bond plan earlier, it would have been addressed in that route.
But
So it becomes a,
I don't know why you spent so much, like I said, I'm in at least 7 or 8 other school districts right now working.
I
And
understand.
the only one I see anything close to that is maybe in Farmington Hills. I mean, in Warren, not one of their schools are like that, their football. I mean, and they just redid at Kuzno, they just redid everything at Kuzno. And at, and Warren Mott, they just redid everything in Mott especially, they just redid the whole entranceway. Nowhere near that. And just,
Have you been to Oxford or Lapeer or Clarkson or any of those?
I know, but you guys, I'm saying, you guys are saying we need money for this, our children just went out, and then you see $300,000 to $500,000 spent on an entranceway to a stadium.
Well, I don't want to get into an argument about that, and I agree that you have your perspectives. The thing is, nothing that we do is not pre-approved. In other words, I want to make it really clear that in the sinking fund, as well as in the bond, the Treasury not only approves those things, but also audits us throughout the process. I think that's a really important thing, that it isn't like we all of a sudden decide, gee, we want to fix
Well, you
something.
said that the bond has had catastrophic failures can happen. We're not gonna be able to afford to do this or afford to do that anymore. But you just spent $300,000 to $500,000 on an interest rate.
I want to challenge you on that cost. Where are you getting your $300,000 to
Well,
$500,000?
it has to be in that ballpark, because I know the field probably cost about $1 million. From my research, that's everything I've read.
I think it would be more appropriate if we gave you an actual cost associated with that entryway, and you have to back out, and I don't know what you think would be an appropriate entryway, a chain link fence and wooden pillars, or what, I mean, we also have some aesthetic requirements that this community demands as well out of our facilities. And aesthetically, it has to look pleasing.
So, if you're.
I don't think it's fair to throw out $500,000 when you don't have the actual information to back it up.
Well, I know how much the field costs. I basically, because I do asphalt, I basically know how much our company's put down 5 tracks this year.
Yes.
I basically know the cost of that too. So you take those two away from the 1.85 million, or
Yeah.
1.54 million.
You know what?
The figures,
You know what?
all, yeah, we'll get those too.
Yes, I'd be happy to sit down with you, Russ, and I sit down and go through it.
Yeah, I'd like to see those
Yeah.
numbers.
Joanne?
But you gotta keep in mind, the sinking fund was to take care of maintenance that you knew was gonna happen. If you've been in a home a long time, you know you gotta replace the roof. Oh my goodness, the hot water heater went out, gotta replace that. Oh, my furnace is so, need to replace that. Now, when you own a home, they talk about air conditioning and a furnace. When you talk about schools, they talk about chillers and I forget what your heating system is.
HVAC.
Boilers. That's what's gotta be, and we know that they've got a useful life. And the sinking fund for every single building says, oh, at, let's say Orion Oaks, that's schools that, and we know that within 5 years, we're gonna have to replace the chillers and the boilers. That's what the sinking fund really addressed, if you get into, and making some patchwork replacements to the sidewalks and the parking lots and things like that. Now, where you're gonna build a brand new school, of course you're gonna have a brand new parking lot, that's not part of the sinking fund. But you're not talking about a new school or something big over at Weber's School. But could that parking lot use a little help? Yes, indeed it could. It's planned for in the sinking, I can't tell you what specific year, but it's in there. And there's a whole long list. I mean, get a magnifying glass out because they use tiny print.
So, real quick to that point, Joanne, and I'm trying to go back, I'm going by memory here, so, but when we kind of sold the community on the sinking fund, wasn't part of that that concrete was going to be closed? But yet, I'm hearing now that we've got to
No, the sinking fund was adopted before they talked about closing any buildings and resizing and doing all that stuff.
Okay.
I mean, I worked on on that long-range planning thing, and I know the time we spent on it,
I'm
and
just trying to clarify, because on one hand, I'm hearing that we have to close the school, which we did, but we really didn't close the school, we repurposed it, right?
Yes, but it's not, it's for a different population of children. That school that we have repurposed is for children with special needs in the whole county.
Understood. Now,
We don't have to pay for it.
now we'll be getting revenue from that, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes,
Yes.
fully
Very
self-funded, and we also
Very,
get
yes.
can you touch on the ISD involvement with that, because I think that's a missing link.
The intermediate school district, which is Oakland Schools, picks up 28 different school districts in the county. We're one of those 28 school districts. And there are children in each of those school districts who are categorized as autistically impaired, emotionally impaired. These children, many of our children with special needs are able to function with assistance within the regular classrooms, in the regular general population. However, there are some children whose special needs are so severe that functioning within the context of the general population is not in their best interest. These are children that go to programs that are called center programs. And the center programs are, the intermediate school district really kind of supports those, so that all children with these kinds of severe needs would go to one center program. There are some, Hazel Park has, I believe, 3 programs. One is for children who are autistic, another one is for children who are emotionally impaired. So they have different ones. There's another school in Waterford, it's called Kingsley Montgomery. That school is for severely emotionally impaired children. And in fact, that program is so full that if we have a child in our district who needs that kind of special service, there's no place for that child to go. And so what we decided to do was, rather than leave Pine Tree empty, that I went to the county and I asked them if they would consider having a center program in our building, Pine Tree, for children who are in northern Oakland County. And I've been on the special education subcommittee of superintendents for many, many years. And so I went with that request, and fortunately they supported that. And so they gave us the startup costs. First I went to the board, of course, and they were very thrilled that we would not have an empty building. But those children who are in that program are, it's self-funded. We don't put any money in that. Those children who are not our resident children and come from other districts would be paying us an amount of money. So there is revenue enhancement. Not a huge amount, but enough that there's no money out of our pocket, so to speak.
So where were those children you're talking about outside of it, where were they before?
Some of them were in the southern part of the county, which is a huge problem, because if you think about a child with that kind of a need who may live in Rochester, having to travel to Hazel Park on a bus, which is probably from here in the morning, going down, let up about 24 congestion, if you imagine. They have children in the southern part, going to the southern part of the county. So that's where they would go. Either they're Kingsley, Montgomery, and Waterford, or some other schools, or in some instances, the school district would have to keep the children in their school district, which is really a difficult issue.
So it'll be a zero cost then? That
Correct.
includes the building and the
Correct.
maintenance and everything that goes with it?
Correct. Right, John?
Yeah, the composition of what the funding basis incorporates all that.
A lot of
Yeah, I'm
that.
not asking to be critical, I'm asking.
No,
from
no,
the
it's a great
taxpayer's
Of course,
perspective.
I appreciate being able to
Does it
clarify
make
that.
sense for the taxpayers of Lake Orion?
From a program delivery point of view, it's well needed, well received, and in the northern end of the county is relatively high need for that kind of support for the kids. And then from the building, from the district maintaining that building point of view, it's going to be used, from a retasking point of view, it's going to be used for children's services that it's originally intended. And the revenue that's generated, the tuition, if you will, covers the cost of operating the building, and there's a small rental fee that the district will see. It's not a great revenue stream, but the building will be taken care of. The bulk of the operating utilities are covered, so it's in a great sense, it's a budget win-win, if you will.
And one other question, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
So within the 160? So within that, how much of that, and actually a two-part question, out of that 160 million over 20 years, because I'm just a little skeptical about my taxes not going up. But that's what I'm being told, my taxes aren't going up, right? The tax rate.
Okay, the tax rate.
The tax rate's not going up, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Depending on the value.
So how much of that is going to, you mentioned the football. I mean, is there any money going to a new football field? Is there anything going to what I would call quote unquote non-essentials? And then the other thing, are we going to be paying for assets that depreciate over the next 7 years or 5 years, like buses or whatever it turns out to be? Are we going to be paying for a bus that's not even here in 18 years from now?
That's a great question. That was a question that was asked in previous bonds as well. And the way the bonds are structured, and the way they have to be paid back, and I'll let Brad and John talk a little bit about that too. They have to be paid back within the useful life of the issue. So technology has always been one that's questioned along with buses. So Brad, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Marion mentioned a few times that this is a highly regulated, very audited process by the Michigan Department of Treasury. And in order to get this approved by them preliminarily, we had to fill out, it's a thick set of forms, it's half-inch, three-quarter-inch thick, all the supporting documents behind this. And part of that process stipulates that all assets must be paid for within their useful life. And that's something that we work very carefully with Department of Treasury and the financial advisor, who's PFM out of Ann Arbor. And all assets are paid for within their useful life. There is a worksheet you have to go through that identifies all the short-term and long-term assets, what their useful life is according to the Treasury's standard and calculation, and that we do have enough principal being repaid within that time frame to pay for technology within its useful life, buses within its useful life, and furnishings and equipment within their useful life. Those are the three targets that they really look closely at because they want to make sure that what you talked about doesn't happen. That we aren't paying long-term for something that we replaced 5 years ago. That actually we're paying for it, and then when it needs to be replaced, that's already paid for, and then you can buy the next one.
So to me, as a taxpayer, and I believe I'm a supporter of the schools, my sent kids here, but I'm also a taxpayer. I see my taxes going up, so I want to know that I'm getting, the most for my money, so to speak. So in 10 years from now, you're not going to be coming back and saying, hey, gosh, we got to do this. We got to do this again. This is a long-term proposal that we're putting out there, right?
This is a long-term.
Right? So
Yes.
Are we not going to see another one here for 20 years? What's the,
Well, certainly.
5 years, 10 years?
I don't anticipate us, if this bond is successful, us going for another bond. But I do think the
Because it's a
sinking
10-year
fund,
process.
yeah, the sinking fund is a 10-year renewal every 10 years for your maintenance thing. So I don't want to be disingenuous and
Right,
not
which
share
we-
that with you.
which
That's
we
the
did.
limited tax.
Right.
Okay, but in terms of a bond, we have a tremendous number of needs, there's no question. We want to keep that tax rate the same. If your property, now I want to be, again, not disingenuous, if your property tax, the value goes up,
Understood.
that changes, of course.
Understood.
Okay, but if we pass this, I think we'll be in really good shape for a long time.
Well, I mean, to kind of bring your question to light, so this is going to last for 10 years. Year 11 from now, the schools that are there that are 60-plus years old, we're going to start running into the same thing where you do with Blanche Sims and stuff like that. So I think we'd be foolish as taxpayers to think that we're going to be out of paying a bond in 10 years, 15 years. I think you're going to always see a bond. I'm not part of the school district or part of the board or anything, but as a taxpayer, I would think that we would see a consistent millage rate there for almost ever, because you're gonna have continual improvements on or schools that are aging out that you're gonna wanna replace, I would assume.
But you will always, I mean, I think it's, the thing is we're not going to ever have a millage rate in a school district. Remember that the way the funding has been structured in this state is that with Prop A, the schools, the money goes to the state, so we can't collect property taxes per se. So it's incumbent on the community to support the schools for things like a bond issue. So, you know, way back when, I remember a number of years ago, before propositioning, we were able to, if you worked in a district like Bluefield Hills, where you received $13,000 or $15,000 per student, you had the advantage of using that money for those kinds of things. But once that stopped, and we do not collect property tax, then we're at I don't want to say at the mercy of, but maybe I do want to say that, of our community to support the building of our schools and the care of the schools. And as I said before, these are your assets. These schools belong to you. This is your community.
Just I'd add to the gentleman's point, but back when the sinking fund was introduced, I did a lot of research. We were actually at a point where we were going to move, and so we were looking at different districts before we were thinking about that. And I looked at the total tax dollars per thousand that you pay per house compared to the ranking of the school district, you know, in Oakland County. And it's pretty impressive when Lake Orion stands right now with the quality of education and the tax dollars that we pay in comparison to other districts like, you know, Troy, Bluefield Hills, Clarkson, Closer, and you can see where they rank. And so I think it's a given that you're going to continue to pay tax dollars over time. You want to maintain the assets, you want to make sure you keep them, but also I think for what we pay compared to other school districts and the level of service we get, it's fairly impressive.
That's the most important thing. Yes.
I would ask something else, I hate to ask this, but if voters were to not approve this, would their taxes go down? I don't even want to say it, but. I don't
Not
understand.
immediately.
The way the tax structure sits now for this school district, and because of the program that many districts like us participate in, we're at a stable tax rate. If we didn't pass another bond for, you know, another 10 years, it stays the same, and your tax rate stays the same, the amount of taxes you pay just continues to pay on the existing tax.
One of the questions, that I think that's kind of leads into one thing I want to say, I don't have a slide for it. We have a lot of debt in this community, and if you recall that when we were looking at the other bonds, that was a big issue. Because at one time when we were growing, we built a high school, we built Oakview, Cave Creek, and Orion Hills, I think we were four schools.
Yep, remodeled all 3 middle schools.
And remodeled a bunch, so the amount of debt at that time was pretty large. What we've been able to do since 2011, I believe, is John has been able to refund a number of our bonds. So we've saved our taxpayers in our refunding, which I have that slide now.
In terms of the refunding savings, that's a 16 million. The rebate payment process, because we've got better interest rates in terms of combination of that, accelerated some of the pay down as well, which is kind of feeding into this proposal that we now have. We're in a much better debt load position. At that time in 2011, I want to say it was 165 million.
165, yep. And now
And
we're
we're
down
about 87.
87. So we've really cut our debt down quite a bit.
Right, so we're considering the tax levies locked in for a certain period of time, and then what's considered the work that's needed, rates and everything else is a great time to be involved with having to go and do some facility work from a bonding point of view.
Thank you.
I would just say one more thing. I think I've become enlightened with Dana. I think Dana's seen every building in this district. And I think you guys offered tours, you know, to folks. And I think that was probably the most eye-opening information that she gave me when she saw the buildings, and she saw the actual condition, and she saw things that can be repaired versus what I would maybe call functional obsolescence, where it's just something you're not going to be able to repair. And so I think, you know, for the community, through this process, if there's an opportunity to have a group tour or something where you can show some of the major issues, it might go a long ways because visually, video of what you guys, what is seen there. I think it can go along with it.
And I welcome that. I wish people would. I had a conversation with a community member who was asking a number of questions and said that he's never been in one of our buildings. And I said, well, if you want to make a decision, I welcome you to come and tour our buildings because you have to actually see. And like I said, we have done a masterful job of masking our flaws in this district. We really have. So we'll take two more. And then
I was gonna ask, so the last 5 you failed, are you guys taking 2? Is the last 5 bond proposals failed, is that what it was?
I don't think so.
No, one?
2.
The last 2? Is the approach maybe a little different? I mean, you guys thought about, why the last 2 failed and the approach to it to get this one passed? Because there is needs, there's no denying. The communication thing is very difficult.
As a school person, we're in a bind. I can't advocate for it, which is probably, is this on TV? That's the dumbest thing ever, that the superintendent would not be advocating for. So I can't publicly advocate for or against. So there has to be a campaign committee that does those kinds of things. And I would hope that people would participate in that. I think what's really different about this one is there is no tax increase. We've refunded the bonds. We've been good caretakers of our facilities to this point, and I think those are the 3 major things. So, the committee is going to have to work on that. I hope you'll sign up, Paul.
Maybe there's a 4th point as well, as we just discussed as well, it's about the change in debt load that's been taken on over the last several years. I think, for a lot of people on previous bond issues, the debt load that the district had was a major concern.
Yes.
And I think that's part of why the sinking fund was received so better. Okay, this is money, there's a pile of money you can pull from rather than additional debt up front. So I think that's a selling point that can be used to promote this time.
Yeah, that was going to be my point, is that somewhere in the slide deck or something, there needs to be the debt level and how that's being paid down and things like that, so that, because that's going to be that's always a hot
I had that in and they made me take it out. They said I was going into the weeds. So.
And Paul, also to answer your question, we also, using GMB, the architecture firm, they have a lot of experience with this, with their latest one. Wes Goodman, who's our director of operations, worked with them on the whole Clarkson bond. So the needs list that we have wasn't just from them, but it was from us. So it was from the guys that are in the buildings daily, Ryan and Chris Green and those guys that are in the buildings daily. And they all basically have been in rooms for 6 months determining what the true needs were.
That's a great point, Scott. We did, we meaning GMB, did a complete survey of all of our staff members, and they all had input into the development of these proposals, as well as a community survey went out to our parents and our community members, not just parents who have children in the district, but also went out to the community at large. We have over 8,000 people who receive our surveys and so forth. So I think that's really a critical point, is that the input wasn't just administrators and teachers and staff who said we need this. This was much larger. Thank you.
Mary, we should point out too, the township did their survey.
Yes.
Number 1 reason that people chose to live here or continue to live here is schools.
For sure. Yeah, they've done that 2 years in a row. And what this is completely off, but I think it's important to let you know. We're doing a number of hires this year, as we have in the past, but more so this particular school year. And the number of teachers who are applying and coming into our school district who are coming from other school districts, even with a lot of experience, tells you what kind of a school district we have. When you have teachers who are leaving a district, like maybe Rochester, to come to Lake Orion to teach, maybe they've been in Rochester 5 or 6 years. So we're really pleased to see that number increase. Was I supposed to say that? Is that okay?
No, that's fine.
So I'll give you a compliment if I may, please. I do bounce around to different schools throughout the year. I've been to Waterford schools, I've been on the Hazel Park. number of different ones, and I do want to compliment the maintenance group and the board on keeping the buildings as best you can with what you're doing. You've done a great job. And I think it is a fact that we all want that. This is one of the best places to bring a family. That's what makes Oregon what it is. So I don't want to just question everything you do, but it's something that you all deserve a pat on the back for the condition of the schools that you keep. So.
Thank you. Without people who question us, we would be complacent, so we appreciate that.
If you're not
Between you
questioning,
and
you're
George
going to
and
spend the extra buck,
Joanne,
that's for sure.
Joanne has been like, I better keep my mouth shut.
Right.
She's been passive tonight, thank you, Joanne.
So
Okay,
one
that's-
question real quick,
yes,
can I
sir.
say the devil's in the details, right? When will the details, and what I mean by that is kind of really getting down to the nitty gritty of the spending, and I'm not here to scrutinize everything
No.
you do. I don't mean that, but it gives us a better idea of, you gave us a pretty broad overview there, right?
Yes.
But not $160 million.
Nope. These sheets, these are the cost summaries of all three series and of each series. These will be going on our website probably by the end of the week, Mark. You think we should be able to get these up? This is directly from it's called a pre-qualifying application, which is what we sent to Treasury, which was approved by Treasury. So this lists every single thing. For instance, what it costs for, let's just say weather, for loose equipment, for site work, for fees, for remodeling, for new construction. I think that's what you're asking for. That will be available to the general public by the end of the week. Okay?
One point that goes towards when we talked about future needs in that, so I was thinking that list has been available for a while. It's been reviewed at many board meetings. The list started at over $300 million of identified needs. This $160 million was actually the pared down list of the things that could actually happen without increasing the tax load. So there are more things out there, and for full disclosure, there are more ideas that the district already had of things that could be done in the next 10-year period, but there isn't the money to do those. And that could lead towards another bond issue in the future potentially, because this doesn't address every need the district had.
Correct.
We're on the have-to list versus the want-to list.
I wouldn't even go that far, because some of the things that were on there, you would have.
They were a wish list. They were. Yeah.
You can say, there was improved educational spaces at certain schools that seemed like that would be a really great idea, but they didn't make the list.
Did they, if I can ask you a question, with all of the security issues that we have nationwide, there are a lot of things in the works that require coordination, requirement levels and so forth that perhaps you don't even know yet. Is there any way that you've addressed that, or are those some possible surprises coming at us down the road?
There are two things. One is the facility security. The other one is the people training. And we have a very, very extensive program. It's called ALICE. It's an ALICE training where we have now trained all of our staff members in how to respond to an active shooter. We're in the process this year, we will be starting to train the kids. It's a very carefully designed program. We have people within the district, in fact Kyle's here tonight, who is at one of them. We sent some of our staff members to become trainers of trainers. They came back and trained every one of our staff members at every level, not only in the schools, but our transportation workers as well. So everyone is trained in what to do in the event of these situations. We even trained the board members how to respond in the, pray to God that never happens, of an active shooter. So we've done that piece, but then there is this whole facility thing. We do have some things in place right now that we were able to do through the sinking fund, but we certainly have a lot more for
It's a
security.
facility issue, and I would think things that you can't know about that may be coming down the pike, and that might lead to additional expenses going forward.
For security. George?
It's obviously fairly complicated and you're going through it pretty quickly tonight, but since I live in that neighborhood, could that Pine Tree have functioned as a preschool since it's already an elementary school?
That's a very good
And
question.
Wouldn't that
And we
have
looked at
been
that.
beneficial rather than building a new building?
The amount of money that would be invested into it as a preschool would have not really been that great. It would not have led itself to that. But there's another issue. You can't have any children on the second floor. That's a requirement by law. Even
In a preschool? Because
Yes,
Plan six
correct.
is
Under first grade.
under first grade, even
Plan six is one
kindergarten.
floor.
Even kindergarten children, I don't know if you remember, was it?
First
I think it
grade.
was Rochester.
Yeah,
that
Rochester
had
got
this
hit.
big controversy a few years ago where they had some of their kindergarten classrooms on the second floor. And unfortunately, someone turned them in. But you can't do that. You can't have children on the second floor. So, but that's a good question. Thank you for asking that.
That's the kind of question I think that most of us that are out there walking around, and this kind of hits you on top of the head, it's like, well, why didn't you just use that for
Right,
that?
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
See,
that's-
those are the kinds of questions that are helpful for me, as opposed to people second guessing us or going on Facebook and answering questions that they don't know the answer to. When you ask that, that's really helpful for me, George, because I know that that's a question
Right.
someone might have, and we're able to respond to it. So I welcome and I really invite you, if you have a question, please contact us. Honestly, I love social media to share my grandchildren's pictures, but I don't go asking questions that I know someone doesn't know the answer to. So please, please call us. Any one of us, we're always available.